Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Power Perception Radio Network. Scott Golden here with you. And if you're new to the network, welcome. Always glad to have new folks. If you are a returning visitor, welcome back. If you are new here, let's just give you a brief overview of what we do. This is the Power Perception Radio Network. I am Scott Golden. I'm the creator of the network. I'm also a strategic interventionist, life coach, and person who helps people's dreams become realities through the power of positive change. And this network is, to a degree, part of that initiative in a very great way. What we do is we take people from all walks of life, the underdiscovered, so to speak, and sometimes every once in a while, somebody who's been discovered on a larger scale but has been out of the spotlight for a little while, such as today's guest, and we give them 60 minutes to talk to you about the creative process. You listen in, eavesdropping, as it were, into that in the form of a podcast format. We've got over 272, I think it's 272, 273, something like that, episodes. So we've been around a while, and we highlight the underdiscovered in all walks of life, from pro wrestlers such as today to thought leaders, life coaches, ghost hunters, and all points in between. And we let you listen in on that. Now, if you'd like to be part of what we're doing, we'd love that, as 43,000 people across 2 social media channels already do, and we love those folks. If you'd like to join me on LinkedIn, Scott Golden is my name. Join me over there. We always love when people do that, or you can do what 33,000 people are already doing, and that's follow us on Twitter at PO Perception. I encourage you to do that because we're not live at the same time every day, as the needs of our guests are varied, as are the needs of my coaching client and my practice. So we work around the needs of our guests, which means we're not on at the same time every day. But if you are following us on Twitter, you can interact with me. You can get the latest and inspirational quotes, but also you'll find out usually within about 5 minutes when we're live for the day. So you can join us live, or you can download later, listen in your archive through your iTunes player or other listening device. But today, I'm really excited because we've got Jonnie Stewart, who is a former professional wrestler with the American Wrestling Association. Those in the Midwest certainly very familiar with the AWA from all those years ago. Vern Gagne, Nick Bockwinkel, and all the rest. He's going to talk to us about being in that crazy business and the link between that and a run for Congress later in life, and how many people would say that the current presidential race is very much filled with professional wrestling style promos. At least some may feel that way. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the link between professional wrestling and perception, the link between how we see the world and how we change the world, and all points in between. My producer tells me that our guest is live, so let me merge that call. And Jonnie, are you with us?
Hi, Scott. How you doing?
Doing very, very well. Thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a 24-hour day that needs 30 hours in it just to make your day full, and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today. So kind of give our listeners, a little bit of background on your involvement in wrestling and how that transitioned into a more public figure in politics and the political role.
Sure. That was an outstanding high school football player, and I just say that just because that's, all state, all conference, all area, and that basically helped me transition and get a scholarship to the University of Memphis. And I specifically went down there because I realized that professional wrestling was very popular down there, and I heard there were some wrestling schools. Back in the 80s, 70s, and 60s, professional wrestling was like the mafia. You had to get sponsored in. It was very hard to actually break in, and you actually had almost like stalk another wrestler or promoter to actually convince them to train you, because they wanted to be convinced that you would keep the secret that pro wrestling was, predetermined. And lo and behold, I went down to University of Memphis, called Memphis State at the time. And about 6 months down there, I met one of the local promoters in a grocery store, actually. And just like you hear about the Hollywood starlets of the 40s and 50s getting discovered in a malt shop or whatever. And I begged him to train me and told him exactly why I came down there, and started wrestling for Jerry Lawler. I got a character immediately called the Beach Boy. I was with a tag team called the Beach Boys, and in the next 20 years, I wrestled for Dick the Bruiser and Vern Gagne, and did some shows for Vince McMahon, and went on the road for about 6 months with WCW as a fill-in for Shane Douglas for the Dynamic Dudes with Johnny Laurinaitis, or Johnny Ace at the time, and traveled over to Singapore and Tokyo, and then the past 10 years, actually from like 97 to 2007, started a company called Wrestling Superstars Live with former AWA promoter Dale Gagne. And literally, we became the largest independent non-wrestling organization in the country. Literally traveled all over the country, and ended up wrestling every single star of a who's who, in my dossier of who I wrestled. And as my career started to wane, my full-time wrestling career started to wane back in the late 90s, a couple of people in Chicago, who knew me through my father and my mother, and knew of me through wrestling, thought that they saw that I was a good speaker and polished, and ran me for the Illinois House of Representatives. And then a year later, when I came back from my honeymoon, those same people encouraged me to run for United States Congress in 2000. And it's been a really wild ride. I've been very fortunate. Just telling someone this morning, I think the biggest disgrace that I could ever behold on myself or my family is not really appreciating the smorgasbord of things that I've been able to do, from high school, college, semi-pro football, professional wrestling, a pundit on Fox News, and driving a race car. I'm playing fast pitch baseball in a highly developed men's league. I just the business world with real estate and the car business. I've been really fortunate, and that's something that what I thought I could bring to this podcast today was to tell people, maybe did I acquire some skills, life skills along the way that let me, I'm 49 years old, and I think I'm kind of a rarity, because I'm proud to say that I'm actually quite satisfied with my life, and I don't think I know a lot of people that can actually say that. And I say that begrudgingly. I'm not happy about that. I wish more people could be a lot more happier and more fulfilled with their life, and I think that's my goal for the second half of my life, is to actually bestow that wisdom that I have picked up, not that I have, or that I have picked up along the way of this incredibly crazy journey of my life.
And I think there's a lot that goes into, when you step into professional wrestling. Perception is everything. How you stand, how you move, how you speak becomes everything.
Oh, absolutely.
But then you take that into the other areas of life. And I forgot who said it, but it's a quote that I love, that really, you are the star of your own movie that happens to be your life. What happens in it is your creation, and how you react to it is your legacy. And so what are some of the life lessons that you learned through professional wrestling that really people might be surprised by when they look at something that now, obviously, WWE is the main television product, but what life lessons did you learn from a very interesting and creative business?
Yeah, I actually got a tingle down my arm. It's just a great question, and I say that, and I'm being serious, because there were so many great life lessons. I think the first life lesson that someone could take from my wrestling career into the business world or into life is I showed up acting like a professional, like I belonged there. I never showed up with sweatpants or blue jeans. The guy that trained me in Memphis always emphasized, dress like who you want to be. Dress like how you want people to treat you. And I think you'd find many, many people, including people like Jerry Lawler and Dick the Bruiser, who would say that, every time I saw the kid, he always had a suit jacket on or a suit and tie. He always had nice jewelry. He always if he didn't, drive the most expensive car, his car was always clean and washed. And I really presented a polished person because I didn't have a resume. And a lot of your listeners are going to be in the same boat or are in the same boat. You're going to go to this big company. You don't have any experience. So it's important to look the part. It's important to walk into that interview with good smelling breath and to smell good. And people might laugh at that, but I can't tell you how nice it is to interact with somebody, to do business with somebody that dresses good, that smells good, that's polished, that speaks well. Nobody wants to be around somebody that they already can be. People want to be around people that are like them or that they want to be like. I have really found that, especially in professional wrestling. And I was a very good professional wrestler. I had a great mic work, and I had a good to a decent body. But I think a lot of the reasons why I got a lot of my contracts and my jobs was that, I acted like an imitation of Ric Flair. I acted like somebody that the promoter would be proud to say, hey, this is a guy that I have under contract. This is one of my professional wrestlers. And, professional wrestling, when I got into the 80s, the guys were, blue-collar guys. Most of them were bouncers or ex-football players. And, so I try to differentiate myself, and there is another thing that your listeners can do. You have to differentiate yourself in the workplace. And another thing that I learned in professional wrestling is that life is not all sunshine, rainbow, pink elephants, and fluffy clouds. The Rocky Balboa movies. It's got a fantastic 3-minute monologue where he explains just that. I found out at a very young age that the world is cruel, the world is mean-spirited. There's also a lot of gracious people. There's a lot of fantastic, opportunities and great moments that you'll have. But most of the time, it's a very nasty, gritty, a place where it's every person for themselves. And that might be a hard lesson for people to understand in a world now where we give out trophies for everyone. There are no winners. We don't keep score. I'm going to tell people something, especially people that are graduating college or in college or just hitting the workforce. If you think that, the job market is going to be like your little soccer association somewhere in upstate, New York or in Connecticut, I'm going to tell you something. It's not that way at all. And no one cares about your circumstance. No one cares about your plight. No one cares about if you misstep. All they want is results and what's good a lot of times for them or good for the company. And especially if you have your own business, there will be no one. There will be no timeout. There will be no backup plan. And that's another thing that I learned in the wrestling business. It was just me in the professional wrestling ring. I didn't have other football teammates. I didn't have mommy and daddy there. I didn't have my lawyer there. I didn't have my professor there. It was me, and it was me and another guy. And that is something that I learned being, as self-employed and a businessman of myself, is that, you better like yourself. You better know who you are. You better be in reality as far as who you are, what you can accomplish, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Because at the end of the day, forget your kids, forget your wife, your husband, your family. It is just going to be you standing there in the metaphoric ring. And I cannot stress that enough to people. So, when you wake up in the morning, like I did when I started wrestling and traveling the country with men, and I was 19 years old in college, let me tell you something. I strapped my belt a little tight. I tied my shoelaces a little tighter. And when I went to work, I didn't go to play. I went to work, to be a professional wrestler. And if you're going to show up, in this day and age at work, go there to work. You're not going there, as for a playground or hang out with your friends. It's serious business. And I think that those are the three things that I really learned with professional wrestling that has demonstrably helped me in my personal and professional life.
So let's take this in a little bit of a different direction. Obviously,
Sure.
News this morning of the I guess what they're calling now a terrorist attack in Florida and 50 people
Yes.
dead. We hear this again and again and again. People getting to a place where they snap and take their anger and their aggression and their hatred of their circumstances out on the rest of the world. What can we as a society do to make sure not looking at gun laws and all that, that's been done to death and talked to death, but what can we do as human beings to be more accountable in terms of what our neighbors, our communities are filled with? Is it about investing in other people? Is it about being more aware of who's around us? What can we do to make the world a safer and better place?
That's another great question. God bless you for these good questions. I mean that sincerely. Yeah, 22,000 gun laws on the record. I talked about this when I ran for Congress. We have enough gun laws. I went from this hard-nosed young Republican to this. I don't even know what I am anymore. I know that I'm an American, and I know that if I don't take an active role in my neighbors' life and livelihood, and in my village, in my city, in my country, I know that we're never going to have a society that we all want to live in. I find it funny at 50 years of age that we have $320 million to buy a B-1 bomber that we don't need, that sits on a tarmac in an Air Force base in the middle of Kansas, and we don't take that money and invest in each other. And I'm not saying that, for the violence to start playing or to tug at people's heartstrings or to set up another run for Congress. I mean that sincerely from my heart. And I think right now when we look at these people, I think who are snapping, who are taking revenge back out on society and on innocent people that have never done anything to them, I think of two things. I think of, are we over-medicating our citizens in this country, in which I think, yes, we are. And I think I could make a good argument for that. But number two is, what do we have in place for that loner or that person that maybe doesn't have a good support network of friends, family, a husband or a wife or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, a professor or a coach? What do we have in society other than a suicide prevention line? What do we have just like a suicide prevention line to help someone like this? Let me tell you something. I found this out in my own life. You cannot discount the power of someone who sits there, not looking at their cell phone, looking you in the eye, and listening to your problem. Whether you're even going to give them good advice or not, that power of another human being listening to you. And I encourage local officials and our government and even us as citizens, whether we do it on Facebook, Snapchat, or whatever, we have the means to reach each other electronically over the internet. And this country has the money to form some sort of a support network for these people to, we have, again, the suicide prevention lines, we have the whistleblower hotlines. I really think, and I don't mean this to sound immatureless or sophomoric, I really think that the government needs to have, or church organizations need to start setting up hotlines or a safe place where these people can go, where they can talk about their problem or talk to someone about what's going on, and that professional or that person on the other end then takes that, and I'm holding up the quotes in the air, takes that file and shifts it over to a medical or a mental health professional. I really think that would help a lot of these random attacks at least decrease. And I think a lot of times we have to also recognize in our own world, if we see somebody that is on the edge, how many of these shooters have we heard people in their life saying, well, we started to see the warning signs and I ignored them. I mean, I could think of 3 people right off the top of my head where I literally saw people in their life say the exact same thing. So awareness, and we need for a place for these people to go. Anthony Benn, the Labour Party leader in Britain, said it the best. If you have the money to bomb and kill people in foreign countries, certainly you have the money, to provide health care and heal people in this country. And I really believe that, and that's something that is very near and dear to my heart. And that's a really good question. I thank you for that.
Well, and it's an important question to me, too, only because I work with people on a different side, kind of on that motivational side, and I can see the difference when a person believes that they have the power to change things versus when clients come to me and they don't feel they have that power. That shift in perception is a quintessential piece of helping people to grow. And back to your point, we have, I think you said $320 million to invest in award claims, but yet 1 in 7 children are food insecure in the United States. Something is out of whack with the priorities when we're not meeting basic needs, but we're meeting conflict needs. So let's take that back to professional wrestling for just a second. Take us back to a time when the on-air character of an individual and the off-air persona were so different that you look at that and say, wow, there's deeper, there's reasons behind our entertainers and our public figures, the hidden known of what makes somebody a star that might inspire people to look at things differently and realize that we are all individuals, part of a collective.
Well, I think some of the most successful professional wrestlers their character was an extension of themselves. I don't know what direction you were asking that question to some degree, but I can tell you that I think a lot of people use entertainment or get into entertainment because they're trying to face a demon, or they have some kind of psychological manifestation that they are trying to overcompensate for. I know that although I saw it live when I was, I think, in 7th grade, and it really captivated me, I know that probably part of the reason that I kept in professional wrestling was I wanted the adulation of the fans like I got when I played high school football. It's a very powerful drug for me, and I'll freely admit that. But I've known a lot of professional wrestlers, and I won't say their names, and a lot of them have been in the news, and a lot of them are dead. Where they're on-air character is this, Joe real happy, positive, I'm going to take on the world, and you see him 4 hours later, and they're crying in their hotel room alone, and they're lonely for their wife or kids, or they still haven't tackled the demons from their youth or their young adulthood, and I found that a stark contrast that and a really good lesson that you could do what you love for a living, wake up every day knowing that you're doing something you love for a living. But again, what I said to you at the beginning of this program, knowing your reality, knowing who you are, knowing where the valleys are, the peaks are, knowing where your holes are in your personality and in your mindset, where you can fix them. And I think that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest hurdle and the biggest accomplishment and goal that we should have as a human being. Because you could have all the money in the world, you could have the prettiest wife in the world, you could have lovely kids, but if you haven't tackled that little monster that's grumbling around inside of you from childhood, whatever it may be, you're still not going to be fulfilled, and you're still going to be unhappy. And the end of the spectrum of that, the far end, the radical end of that, is walking into a nightclub and killing 50 innocent people. And I don't think me making that comparison is out of line. This is, I see in our country right now in the past 6 months, like I saw during the Chris Benoit era in pro wrestling when he murdered his family. I see two freight trains coming at each other on the same railroad line, and I see that in our country now. And we need, whether our leader or our leaders or us as just as citizens, we need to, take a stand and say we need to take back our country, take it back, meaning not maybe support the government, but to start healing each other. And I don't think that's new age, mumbo gumbo. I think I'm valid in what I'm saying. We have a mental health problem in this country that is that's beyond the pale of what I think any of us could realize that it would come to. And we have so much information out there on the internet that but we have to, we're like a fly hitting the window. If we don't know where the hole is to get out, we're going to just keep hitting the window. We could try as hard as we can, but we got to find out where that hole is to get out into the daylight and into the sunshine. And that's something that I think that we all need to focus on as human beings and as a country.
And I couldn't agree with you more. There's a statistic that says 1 in 6 people, so that's 18% of us, have someone around us who has an untreated or undertreated mental or emotional instability or illness. Think about that. That means if you're sitting in a room of 20 people, 3 of those people aren't getting the help that they need or aren't dealing with themselves in the right way. That's really scary. And I know
it's mind-boggling. Yeah.
I know you mentioned, and I'll take the bullet because you're being more diplomatic than I will choose to be. I'll take the bullet on this one. You mentioned Ric Flair earlier in the interview. There's a guy who, broke in 1972. We're now, 45 years later or thereabouts, and he's on marriage number 4 or 5. Been through millions of dollars and still searching for something. And for those who are listening to this that are wrestling fans, no, I'm not picking on Rick, but there's a mentality to that says, when is enough in terms of being able to own yourself and own the identity of who you are, and then also say, I am good enough, even if I've made missteps, even if I've got knocked down, how do I get back up?
Right. Yeah, especially with Ric Flair, I think that's, you're asking, Ric Flair is the reason I got into professional wrestling. Vern Gagne called me the $5 Ric Flair with my robes and my boa feathers and my sequins and my blonde hair, and I aspired to be Ric Flair. And as his, he's not my mentor, but as someone who idolized him and wanted their professional wrestling career to be like him, it really dismays me of what what his life has turned into. 4 marriages. Rick's probably blown through $20 million if he's blown through $1. And 4, his son dying, and just the wreckage that he has left along the way. To be a professional wrestler, or this, he's fighting this demon. From knowing Rick and knowing of Rick, I know that he was adopted, and I always look at him and I wonder, is he never really tackled that problem, or that that insecurity that a lot of kids who are adopted feel, that they never really knew their mom or dad, and Rick grew up, his mother and his father was a cardiologist. They were a very prominent, couple in Minneapolis, and but again, all the money and all the love in the world, could never fill that hole. And I think that's, if you look at Ric Flair's lifestyle, there's a guy that's trying to fill a hole which is a bottomless pit, and just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. I heard that he's sworn off marriage, and thank God for that, because 4 times a charm. But I feel bad. I don't want probably the greatest living professional wrestler of all time, to be sleeping on his daughter's couch in an apartment, or to be a guy that doesn't pay his bills, and that's not that's Rick. That's beneath Rick. And but he is an example of when somebody doesn't want to look in the mirror, and again, I am not judging Rick, and if he should ever get wind of this, or I'm saying this out of my respect for him and my honor for him, and I honor him, and his career has been incredible. But I wished for a better, a better outcome than it has now. I know he's rebuilding his career, and I think he's and he's done a great job of that. It's just the wreckage that he's left behind, and it goes to point, where at some point you have to look in the mirror and say, what am I missing? What is it that is preventing me from doing it the right way? And I encourage anybody, talking to a health professional, whether that be a priest, a licensed clinical social worker up to a psychiatrist. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I don't discount self-help books. I mean, any piece of information that can help someone, kind of, expunge that demon out of their life. And if I might get personal right now, my last time I was in a baseball uniform for an organized baseball team in 8th grade, I had a very, very, very bad traumatic experience. No, it was not something sexual. It was a very traumatic experience for me. And that demon has sat with me for, almost 40 years. And I'm not going to get personal here, but I finally stood up last year and said, I think there's something grumbling in me that I need to take care of. And I joined a men's baseball team to try and exercise that demon. And I'm not speaking from an ivory tower here. I'm just saying that, you have to look in the mirror and say to yourself, something's wrong here. Something's not going right. I have to fix it. And find any way you can to fix it, and do not stop until you feel that it is fixed or exercised. And I cannot emphasize that strong enough for people. And we all have little quirks and foibles about our personality and our character and our behavior. But if when you look at a life like Ric Flair, I think it would have behooved him 20 years ago to seek professional help if he didn't, or he did, and tackle the demon that I think was that he was adopted.
And I'll get very candid. I think this interview has taken a amazing turn for getting very real and very gritty, and I love that, because I think anyone listening to this can identify with overcoming something in their lives. And in an earlier point, and this network exists because I spent a dozen or so years as a play-by-play announcer for professional wrestling at the independent level. Never got to a national level. Wasn't in the cards for me, but I chased that dream. But going all the way back, I chased that dream because I grew up in a household filled with physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse, and I wanted to recreate my story. And so fell in love with that industry from a very early age and thought, if I could just be part of that, if I could just come to life on a screen, I can be something different than what I am. And it took me years, probably a decade plus, to realize I'm going to have to deal with it at some point. So honoring that, all right, it appears we've lost Johnny there. Maybe his phone stopped working there, or I don't know if he was on a cell phone. There we go. Let's remerge with Johnny there. And Johnny, you back with us?
Yeah, I am so sorry.
That's all right. Technology is friendly, but only when it works.
Yeah.
But
right.
But and as I was saying, I get into professional wrestling at the announcer level to avoid dealing with my own inner demon, so to speak, of growing up in a household filled with abuse. And so I wanted to recreate the story of what I was telling myself. But you're right, I had to deal with that later. And so now, here's the amazing thing. As I spent the time at the independent level in pro wrestling, I learned, wait a second, if these guys create characters, if they create images, why can't a banker do that? Why can't a car salesman do that? Why can't a housewife do that? Wait, don't we all do that? Isn't perception reality? And then it clicked for me that our perception becomes our reality, so that we can always shift to a positive, neutral, or negative outlook. And it's one of the few things in life that we control. We control our reactions to circumstances 100% of the time. Now, shifting into another direction there just a little bit.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that for one minute.
Go ahead.
That's one of the biggest things that I tell people, or I even tell myself when meeting people. I listen to people's their narrative about themselves. And it's one thing I can tell your listeners, pay attention to your own narrative, what you tell people. Hi, my name is Jonnie Stewart. Oh, yeah, I used to be a professional wrestler. I ran for Congress. Oh, I've had this really exciting life, and I run my family's business now. And, I've got a beautiful wife and great kids, the best friends on the planet Earth. And I'm always looking for something to inspire me. And I'm seeking the truth and this. Or, hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a divorced mom. My husband was a jerk. Life is difficult. And remember, what you tell yourself subconsciously and, verbally out loud, your brain will fit you into that narrative. So and I don't say to lie to people, but, there's nothing wrong with window dressing or skirting around or sugarcoating some of the negative things in your life, and at least not even talk about them as far as meeting people or what you daily say in your inner monologue. And that, I just wanted to get that across because you were making such an eloquent point about your own life and with wrestling and whatnot. And, I just wanted people to remember, tell yourself over and over again how you describe yourself and how your life and how your, again, perception is of yourself is crucial, will make the difference, I promise you.
So I got to ask a fun question here. Which is more impactful? Which is more real? The action between the ropes or reality TV?
Oh, the action between the ropes, because reality TV, you can stop, edit, rewrite the script, I've done 2 reality show TV pilots that have been put in the turnaround in Los Angeles by the 2 production companies. And, reality television is about as real as, Bozo the Clown, Bozo Circus. But between the ropes, I know the outcome. I know that I'm going to get pinned or I'm going to pin someone. And what happens in between the start of the opening bell to the ending bell is about as real as it gets, So I without a doubt, believe me, I'm having back surgery on June 30th. Professional wrestling is a lot more real than most people give it credit for.
And I knew that, and I knew that's where you were going. I did want to throw that out there as a fun question,
right.
Simply because you mentioned in your profile about those reality television projects. Are those things we can
right.
talk about, or are they still in the can and yet to be picked up somewhere?
Yeah. They're trademarked and copyrighted. And yeah, we did an executive from Fox TV, headed up Avalon Television out of the United Kingdom. And he wanted to do my family's used car dealership. And it was called Tire Kickers. And we were all set to sign the deal with A&E, and the president of A&E was a woman at the time. She went out to Las Vegas for a television conference and saw the Tobin Dodge with all the crazy commercials, and that's what ended up being the car dealership on TV, which I think was called King of Cars. And the other reality show that I have done with my partner Christopher Jackson, known as Q-Ball Carmichael in professional wrestling, we are doing a independent wrestling show rescue program like Kitchen Nightmares or Bar Rescue, where we go with Bruce Pritchard, who used to be with the World Wrestling Entertainment, Vince McMahon's right-hand man. We go in with Bruce to these independent wrestling promotions that are really run poorly, whether that be, just the business plan, the visuals, the aesthetics, you name it, the talent, the merchandising, the costumes. And we go in and we polish up and we fix and rescue these independent wrestling shows. And the pilot we shot in Pittsburgh. It went great, and that's still being batted around. And I've got another one coming out, a pilot, which is on the same concept of golf course, where we're rescuing these golf courses that, since Tiger Woods is not playing actively, a lot of these golf courses around the country have really fallen, believe it or not, into serious disrepair and taken over by, private families and whatnot. And we're shooting the pilot as we speak on that. And I think that's actually going to be a lot more interesting than the wrestling one. But it's But as far as reality goes, there's not that much real, It's a lot of it is scripted, and a lot of it is heavily edited. But that's what you have to do to make television interesting. Sometimes the spontaneity, is heavily edited.
So let's suppose that we have a little fun now, and we obviously are in the midst of perhaps the most heated presidential race in modern times. So let's throw a curveball at folks. What if somebody came to you and said, "Okay, you get to choose who the next president and vice president of the U.S. is, but they have to have a pro wrestling connection. Who goes in the White House?"
Oh, wow. God, you have some really good questions. Honestly, I'm going to, I would say, I think Jesse Ventura. Now, just hear me out here. Jesse Ventura, I think, would make a fantastic president. In regards to the line of Reagan and Nixon, I said that I was on I don't know if you've heard the Bruce Dumont show. It's called Beyond the Beltway. It's syndicated nationally. I did it 2 weeks ago. And I made a reference that, someone like Jesse Ventura, who, first of all, is a great American, walks his talk, speaks from the heart, does not care about special interests. That's the first thing you have to, if you want a successful president, you want to change Washington, have to not care about special interests. They have destroyed this country. But, Jesse's got a little hair trigger. Jesse's got a little, maybe a little craziness behind him, as people would look at him. And I think that fared very well for Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon. I mean, so many people from the former Soviet Union have commented in documentaries that, Mad Richard Nixon, who could care less about going into a nuclear war, really changed the geopolitical situation between Russia and the United States, and started this mass buildup of the USSR, carried over into the Reagan administration, where it bankrupted the USSR and really brought it to the forefront of the planet, of the world, of the Russian Federation, and won the Cold War. And it's the same thing with Ronald Reagan. With the doddering old fool, press the button at a given moment, really changed the world for Russia too, and for Richard Nixon really brought North Vietnam to the peace table and ended the Vietnam War. And so I think Jesse Ventura's got a little touch of that Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon in him, and I think he'd make a great president. He's about America first, not about the special interests in the corporations. And I think for his vice president, I think you could, I would feel comfortable to have somebody like, believe it or not, Kevin Sullivan, who I think is highly intelligent. I think Greg Gagne would be another one that I, believe it or not, I think would be, he's used to thinking out things methodically, has got an even temperament, never really seen him, go off half-cocked. I think that's important for a vice president, very diplomatic. I could see, Kevin, I think because he's extremely intelligent and, very calm and, as everyone's jumping around with their, the room, Kevin would be the one standing there, calming down the situation and giving his feedback. And I think that I would definitely like to see those two in the White House if we could so speculate and have that as our possible future.
All right, and so coming back to the wrestling world now. So suppose that somebody handed you that same magic wand and said you can make one change to the professional wrestling industry with two rules, two caveats though. Firstly, it has to help as many people as possible. Secondly, it can't hurt anyone. What do you do and why?
Oh, wow. Well, I grew up in the wrestling era and started in the wrestling business as myself in this smoke-filled arena where people thought it was real. And if I had my magic wand, and I'm not one of those bitter ex-wrestlers that, the product right now is glossed up, it's corporatized, there's not a lot of labor problems, guys wrecking hotel rooms or, going to jail for hitting their girlfriends and drug problems like it was in the 80s and 90s when it was the Wild West. So I don't mind the product. I don't think it's that interesting to me. because I grew up on a different type of professional wrestling, not sports entertainment. And again, nothing wrong with either. But, man, I witnessed the magic. I was in the ring during the magic. I was there as a heel, a bad guy, when people thought that I was really a bad guy, that they thought it was real. I felt that heat where people wanted to literally take my life. And if I could wave a magic wand for the men and the women in wrestling right now, was to get back that realness where people, they knew it was predetermined, but it's like kind of watching a Tom Cruise movie where it's Mission Impossible. It could be happening. You suspend your disbelief. And I think that would help a lot more of professional wrestlers that aren't doing it full time, because I think it would increase live attendance. And that's one thing that pro wrestling is lacking, especially with World Wrestling Entertainment, is their live attendance. TV and pay-per-view, I think, are fine, but the live attendance isn't there because, for people to actually go out, get in their car, get their family, spend $300 to buy tickets and merchandise and a Coke and a hot dog and everything, there's got to be something more than just the WWE is coming to town. Pro wrestling is coming to town. It's got to have a hook. And for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, the hook was, this could be happening. This might be happening. And I'm going to tell you something. I just can't get across enough. And if you ever hear Jim Cornette in any of his podcasts or you shoot videos, he's so passionate because like me, he was there and felt that magic. Felt when 10,000 people thought what was happening in the ring or what were you doing was real. And God, I wish the guys and the women today, even though they're wrestling in front of 30, 40,000 people, I really wish, though, at times so many of the wrestlers could have realized and felt like what it was like when the audience believed it, that was happening. And if that's my magic wand, that's what I would really like for the wrestling business.
And so I'll paraphrase the late, great Johnny Valentine, and he once said, I can't make them believe that what we do is real, but I can make them believe that I am. And I think...
my God, that's great. I love it.
And I think that's what's missing, not only in pro wrestling, an age-old art form that goes back 100 years, but in life.
Right.
People have to believe that you believe in you. Because if you don't believe in you, why should anybody else?
Right. It's like Gorgeous George, or Ric Flair showing up to the arena in a rented Chevy Corsica. I mean, wait a minute. You're telling everybody you make $4 million a year, you're in limousines, Lear jets, or Ric Flair living in a one-bedroom house outside of Charlotte. I mean, we meaning wrestlers who come from the pro wrestling era, not sports entertainment, we realized we had to live our gimmick to some degree in the real world. I was the spoiled brat Jonnie Stewart. I couldn't, I had to drive a fancy or a sports car, and I had to be a little reckless in the bars and stuff, and I had to live that gimmick. And so yeah, it was I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's I might not be able to change the industry, but I can determine and I can change, or I can show I have control of who I am and in my little place in the wrestling industry. That Johnny Valentine quote is fantastic. That's the first time I heard that. It's great.
Actually, I borrowed that from, I think it was Jim Cornette that was talking on his podcast about that concept earlier this week. And so I want to borrow your memory for a second. At what moment did you say to yourself, I did something here with professional wrestling. I'm here. I did it.
Oh, my God. I swear to God, your questions are great. Because most everybody, I like to do a radio interview or something that get really general, generic. That's a great question. Great question, and there was three moments. 4 moments, actually. When my third night in the wrestling business, Bill Dundee doesn't show up. Jerry Lawler needs a tag team partner for the main event, and he picks me because I was on the opening match. He picks me to be his tag team partner, and I had watched Jerry for 5 or 6 years. Second, I take a business psychology exam in Evanston, Illinois. somebody rushes me to the airport. I'm 21 years old, 21, junior in college. Somebody rushes me to the airport. I fly to Rochester, Minnesota. A hotel shuttle van picks me up. We go past the Mayo Civic Arena. Again, I'm a 21-year-old junior in college. I just took a final exam. And out on the Jumbotron in front of the Mayo Civic Arena was tonight's main event, Sergeant Slaughter versus the illustrious Jonnie Stewart. I go to Walgreens to get athletic tape, and there you could buy a party kit for your little 7-year-old boy of Sergeant Slaughter plates and napkins and streamers. And I really said to myself, and there were, 80, 90 people outside the arena buying tickets basically for our match. And I really said to myself, oh, my God, you did it. I mean, you did it. Another time I remember that really comes vividly, wrestling Paul Diamond at the Toronto Coliseum. I knock on my own dressing room door. I walk out of my dressing room door. There's 7 Toronto police officers in riot gear leading me down this, 200-yard corridor, the walk under the arena, which to me was the best thing about being a pro wrestler. It was the best ego trip you could ever have. And I remember, they were playing my music and surrounded by, police and riot gear. And I'm like, man, this is what, when you were a kid at the arenas, this is what you saw, Dick the Bruiser coming out and people wanting to kill him. And you did it. This is okay. You got it, kid. This is your moment. And, probably lastly, wrestling Jimmy Snook in a cage in Singapore. Again, I was only 22 years of age. A lot of things that, happened when I was such a young man that really stand out that, wow. And, even now, when on ESPN Classic, when they used to play the old AWA tapes, just seeing myself in this professional production in this arena and in the main events and stuff, I was very fortunate. And I believe it or not, pro wrestling, the people that succeeded in is a very small family, and I'm very fortunate. I didn't make a lot of money in professional wrestling, which is my Achilles heel, but certainly those moments and so many more that probably haven't come to mind are ones that stand out that I really truly remember back then saying to myself, oh my God, give yourself a pat on the back. You accomplished your lifelong dream.
So we've got about just under 8 minutes remaining, so I want to ask one question completely for selfish reasons for me, because I'm curious, and another in a more philosophical way. We'll take the personal question first. Nick Bockwinkel, to me, the best heel in the history of the business. That's just my personal opinion. If you have one or two, a Nick Bockwinkel story for us?
Oh, Nick, who was my mentor, and I'm proud to say that, I never tried to role model myself after Nick because I knew I just couldn't do it. I was too hyper to speak eloquently and slowly and methodically like he would speak. Just a great story, and I've never told this publicly, and so I'm glad that I have the opportunity. Wayne Bloom refuses to show up towards the end of the AWA era, or before they go out of business, on the TV taping, because he knows Vern and Greg are going to take away the titles from the Destruction Group. True story. I've never told this story ever on TV or radio. So Greg says, well, Johnny, you're going to fill in for Mike. We're going to take the pin on Johnny, and that's the way we're going to take the tag belts. Well, Mike Enos gets a wind of this, and we all go to take care of business. And as everybody knows, when you go to take care of business in pro wrestling, you do it in the shower or the bathroom. So it's Greg Gagne. Vern and Greg Gagne, to me, is like Fleetwood Mac to a rock person, to a rock aficionado. I grew up on watching Vern and Greg, and so it's Vern and Greg, Nick Bockwinkel, me and Mike Enos in the shower, and Vern and Mike Enos and Greg Gagne start having a arguing match over, give me the straps back, give me the goddamn belt back, you're not going back home with the tag straps. And Vern Gagne and Mike Enos are at either end of the tag team belt, and they are like doing a tug of war, but like spotted down like they're the Melendez in the like a vaudeville act. And Nick Bockwinkel is giving me, the eyes and this and that and the other. And so finally, we finally calmed down and we realized that we're going to call Wayne and we're going to have him drop the belt at the very next TV taping. As we're walking back, we're sitting there. It's Zbyszko, Nick Bockwinkel, me, Sheik Adnan. And I tell everybody, Nick and I are telling it, Larry and Adnan, the story of Vern Gagne, Greg Gagne, John Stewart, Mike Enos, and Nick Bockwinkel. And Nick Bockwinkel looks up and he looks at me and he looks at Larry. He goes. I don't think John Stewart realizes this. That's gonna be his greatest booking ever. Meaning, when would I ever have a more high-profile match and have all of my idols, together in a wrestling match? However, it was in the shower. But when Nick looked up and said, that's Jonnie Stewart's greatest booking to date, I remember Larry Zbyszko laughed for 20 minutes. I mean, it was one of the funniest. And Nick was not a humorous person. Nick was, a storyteller. Well, he was a storyteller, but he was not, somebody that would do something funny like that. So that's one of the funniest things that I remember about Nick. I just always remember him just being just a complete class act, nonstop. How he was in front of the TV camera is how Nick was, how Nick was back in real life. Just a consummate gentleman. But that story when he looked up and said that's Jonnie Stewart's best booking ever, and it took place in a shower. It was just I'll never forget Larry Zbyszko laughing for 20 minutes.
All right, we just got a few minutes left, so we're going to end on a bit of a philosophical question. Life is created by two things, memories and legacies. We've shared some memories today, certainly. What is the legacy of Jonnie Stewart?
I just want people to know that I tried. I want people to look at my life and say, there's a guy that, had some advantages and had some disadvantages, and that I tried to do everything and am trying to do everything that I think that I was put on this planet and created to do. And that I took the wrestling business seriously. I love the wrestling business. I want people to know that I kept a secret inside me for 30 years, and the secret is that I love the wrestling business, and it has given me a life. It gave me a life. I can walk around and look people in the eye and say I am one of the few people, like a Michael Jordan or a Walter Payton or a Dan Marino. I successfully did my lifelong dream. I accomplished it. I don't think a lot of people can say that. And how I could ever look at pro wrestling any other way than on my knees in gratitude and the utmost respect. And I owe pro wrestling everything. It has given me a fulfillment as a 49-year-old man that I don't think a lot of people have, and that's what I want people to remember, that I tried my best. And I set out and I accomplished accomplishing my lifelong dream, which was to be a professional wrestler. And I'm one of the happiest people that I know because of that.
All right, and with that, we've got less than about 15 seconds remaining. Once again, Scott Golden here with the Power Perception Radio Network, reminding you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.